What's going on here?
Oh, that's that imaging stuff.
Oh, got it. Okay, got it.
Oh, good.
Does it include a taser? When they feel like it's more money.
Yeah. When they take their time, they show up at county commission meetings. It's serious.
Apparently there's an AED.
Yeah, it shouldn't have any issues other than.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. It's of Ways and Means Committee. It's Wednesday, April 18th, 7 p.m. And we'll start by the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you do the roll call, please?
Commissioner Gilman,
Here.
Henschel,
Yes.
Inman,
Here.
Lemko,
Here.
Max Bauer, Richardson,
Excused.
Thomas.
Yep.
Wheelock,
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Fleece.
Present. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of March 21st, 2012, the regular session.
Motion to approve?
Support.
Is there any discussion? Been moved and supported to approve the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same. Motion passes unanimous. Would you read the rules for public comment, please?
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners, which is required to be open to the public under the provisions of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4, Order of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized, and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to public comment on any topic? Ray, did you have something you wanted to cover? Okay.
Do it when Gene.
Judges? All right. We'll move on.
Boy, that sounds like it's going to be really expensive. Put down together. This is going to cost a lot of money.
Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve is presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Been moved and supported to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes. Special orders of business. National County Government Week presentation. Jason Jones and Sheriff Schimmick. You're up. Good evening.
For part 2.
Part 2.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Again, Sarah Schimmick, Community Outreach Coordinator for Grand Traverse County Health Department.
Jason Jones, Grand Traverse County Parks and Recreation Director.
So we've got part 2 of our National County Government Month feature. Last week we got to hear a lot of very interesting information from Jason about parks and recreation and how they benefit the health of our county citizens. So this week I'm here to talk a little bit more about the specifics of the health department and clinical health services and the kinds of things that we provide for our county citizens. So take charge of the clicking.
Sure.
I thought it'd be interesting to look first at the actual definition of what is health as defined by the World Health Organization. They set this definition in 1948 and it has not changed a word since then. They defined it as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. One unique thing about Grand Traverse County's health department is that we promote health, both physical, emotional, mental and social across all ages. And I thought it'd be nice to highlight some statistics across each age group, starting with preconception. Between our family planning program, which in 2011 served 2,516 citizens, and our STI program, which according to a 2010 study put on by the Michigan Association of Local Public Health, saves $2.50 for every dollar spent on the screenings.
Sorry, what's STI?
Sexually transmitted infections.
Thank you.
Yes. Following preconception would be conception, obviously, and prenatal care. Two major programs that Grand Traverse County supports would be the WIC program, Women, Infants, and Children. It's a food supplemental program. In 2011, the food purchases supported by WIC put $1.9 million into our local economy. And Project Fresh, which you may have heard me speak about before, it's a coupon program that provides coupons at the local farmers market for county residents on WIC. And last summer, it put $15,000 directly into the hands of Grand Traverse County farmers. Another program that supports prenatal wellness is our maternal and infant health program, which provides public health services to Medicaid-eligible women and their children. And in 2011, only 9 of 989 births received late or no prenatal care, which is pretty phenomenal if you consider the unique makeup of our county and the importance. Obviously, they value prenatal care. So following prenatal care, obviously there's a need for infancy health, and several programs touch on that, such as Healthy Futures, which is available as a collaboration with Munson and several other local health departments to provide new families visits and phone calls, support from public health nurse staff, and assure that they get early access to the right health care services depending on their unique individual needs. New in 2011, we established a breastfeeding support group, kind of a collaboration with our WIC program. 15 to 20% of adult obesity could be prevented through breastfeeding, and that's according to the CDC. And in 2010, 33.5% of Grand Traverse WIC clients were breastfeeding. So that's kind of our starting point, and I'd love to come back in a year or two and let you know how that rate has improved. Another area that's essential to infants' health is immunization. 4,000 immunizations provided in 2011, and in fact, 75% of children aged 19 to 36 months were fully immunized, which is, we put us in the top 10 for the state for a county rate. Another interesting fact about immunizations is that it saves $22 for every dollar spent on childhood immunizations, and that's the same study that I quoted earlier. As for youth care, we have unique adolescent health clinics, one in Kingsley, which is school-linked, meaning it's not on school property, but it is supported by Kingsley Schools, and the Youth Health and Wellness Center over at Career Tech Center. And they served 1,200 unique clients, meaning several clients received multiple different services, which totaled 4,500 in 2011. And another area that focuses on the wellness of youth in our county is the vision and hearing screenings. Almost 12,000 hearing and vision tests were administered in 2011, which combined saves $272 for every dollar spent on either hearing and or vision screenings. And then as for adults, we have multiple programs that you can read more about on our website, or you can reference our 2011 annual report. But we've got our breast and cervical cancer screening program, which offers free mammograms to low-income women with little or no insurance. The prenatal care programs that I spoke about, such as WIC and Healthy Futures and MIHP, not only benefit the child, but also the mother and father. Immunizations for adults, like seasonal influenza, H1N1, things like that. STI testing also benefits our adults. Communicable disease, we do TB testing, which is used quite often in new hires and in employments. The STI testing, foodborne illness, which is part of our environmental health services, which also covers the septic and well permits, water quality testing, food service inspections such as restaurants, which another new thing we added in 2011, you can now access all of your restaurant inspection reports on our website. So basically what What we'll be back to talk about next week is how where we live, work, and play truly matters for our health. And we'd like to bring some suggestions, ideas, and innovative ideas that Grand Traverse County can do to continue to promote the health and wellness of our healthy county, healthy families. Any questions?
Anyone have any questions of them? Jason?
Just a comment.
Sure.
Pretty cool presentation. I mean, I like the way that
Yeah.
it kind of flows and everything.
Thank you.
It's kind of neat.
Are there any questions from the audience regarding their presentation? I have one question.
Sure.
Like the one last slide there, you save $272 for every dollar? Mm-hmm. How is that determined?
It was a study conducted in 2010 by the Michigan Association of Local Public Health. I know for the vision and hearing specifically, it looked at, it was over the course of 25 years, and how vision and hearing, if there are failures in vision and hearing, how they can cost in healthcare, direct costs, also indirect costs such as productivity, loss of productivity in the workplace, and things like that if a person has a hearing deficiency that isn't properly addressed. But it's different. It was a case-to-case on each different category where it looks at how to save money, indirect and indirect costs, and I will definitely make sure to add a link to that study on the National County Government Month website.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda, under B, is the presentation of pooled procurement services by Steve Curry from MAC, and that's been postponed until our board meeting next Wednesday. So moving down, next item would be the consent calendar. Would you read that, please?
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval is approved by the single committee action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file. 1, budget calendar for 2013. 2, Building Authority refunding bond series 2012, Standard & Poor's rating. B, approval. 1, budget adjustments. C, action, none.
Okay, having heard the consent calendar, is there anyone in the audience wishing to have any items pulled? Seeing none, anyone from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Been moved and supported to accept the consent calendar as presented. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Henschel.
Yes.
Inman.
Yes.
Lemko.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yep.
Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman.
Yes.
Chairman Flees.
Yes. Okay, the next item would be the department action items, the GIS. Number 1 is request to alter rates for digital data and hourly services, page 19 in your packet. Good evening, Ernie.
Hi, Ernie Kachalia, GIS Director. Good evening, everyone. There's 3 items that I would like to address. Most of these are strictly housekeeping things that came up sometime since we updated our enhanced access policy. And there's a few things, if I could go into detail if you like, but I think they're fairly clear from the rubric I provided. One of them is, mostly it's here to adjust some costs. I mentioned that we were paying 15 cents per copy for copies that we were providing to various townships, I should say, for half the cost. So I wanted to get that cleaned up. I think that's fair to ask. Another one was a formalization of I'm not sure what was something that was presented to the board, but I'm not sure was formalized, and that's to allow the county administrator to provide data to organizations or institutions, GIS data, at his discretion, the cost at his discretion. Also, we expanded some of the discounted rates to not just TCAPS, but to the other school districts in the area, and also some emergency services. And I believe that covers things that were on the rubric. So I don't know if you want to handle that resolution first, and then we can move on.
Jason?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the request to alter the rates for the digital data and hourly services.
Second.
Here's the second, Rob. Okay. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion passes.
Okay, now if I could jump to the third one in the list for the GIS. That's regarding the cost of aerial imagery to the public. When it was first established, we had essentially, these images are parts of a mosaic. And when we first did this, one of those parts was about a mile square. And we charged $10 to the public for that. And that was for black and white, and the resolution was 18 inches. What's happened is we've gone to a finer resolution now, and they're more valuable for that reason. They have higher resolution, but they're also smaller. And so I'd like to keep the cost of the same per image, but essentially a mile now, which used to cost $10, would approximately cost about $45. So one of the reasons I'm doing this is because it's easier for us to compute and to demonstrate to the public how those costs are achieved. If they come in and they want an image, we can basically say it's $10 for that image. If it spans more than one image, then they'll pay the additional cost. So that's what that third item was about.
Move for approval.
Support.
Any discussion?
Just a question, Ernie, just ballpark, how many of these images are people asking for a year that?
Frankly, I don't handle a lot of that because Reiner does most of the dissemination of the data to the public. I would imagine that we probably sell between 50 and 100 a year, just a ballpark.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Everybody understand the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion's unanimous.
Thirdly is the second resolution in the GIS list there. This is regarding a book that we had created in 2003. It was actually created based on the Grand Traverse County roadmap, and what we did is we took the roadmap and cut it into pieces and put it on pages and indexed it. It was really popular, but it was a really tedious thing to do. And since then, the software's come a long way, and we're able to kind of streamline that process. We can update this a lot easier now. Thanks to Mike and my department, he's been very helpful in doing this. And so we'd like to reissue that. I just want to increase the price by $5 to $20 from $15. We sold the last one $15. This is an item that we sell. Maybe 50% of these go to people in emergency services and that sort of thing, local fire departments and volunteers and that sort of thing. We'll pick this up because it's very handy to have in a car. When you don't have when you don't have automated maps in your cars, this is the next best thing. So,
Motion to approve.
Support.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
When we give it to emergency services, do they get it free or do they have to pay for it?
we usually charge them for it.
Is there a way for us not to, or maybe to discount that for emergency services? I mean, we're all benefiting when we do that.
Right, I agree. what we've done to this point is allow the departments that are interested in providing these to the emergency services to purchase it from us, and then they can, so the sheriff's purchased them, and 911's purchased them.
Can they be able to pull that up off online and then print it themselves if they have a color printer?
Well, yeah, I suppose we could do something that I haven't looked into, but the thing is, then you'd also probably have to make it available to the public, too.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that if emergency services could pull it up and do their own printing, then they could get it for nothing and have them access that for...
Well, going back to our previous resolution,
Yeah, well,
going back to the previous resolution, if the administrator was directed to, he could do that, we could do that.
that's my only concern about doing this. Yeah, I understand charging the general public, but I just have a concern with the emergency services people.
Well, I think a lot of that has changed a lot, but one of the problems is, the indexing is so important because, we can't all remember all these subdivision roads in today's world. So the indexing is what really helps with this thing, and I used to have one in my truck. I don't think I do now, but
They became quite scarce, actually. That's one of the reasons we decided.
yeah, I think I lost mine, or I let somebody borrow it and didn't get it back. Most likely is what happened.
Well, if anybody's used the county road map, they know this is a lot handier.
Well, yeah, you can't fold the one that the road commission gives you and fold it out over your steering wheel and try to figure out where you're going. It just doesn't work. This is much better, no question. And didn't we laminate some of those too?
This is only a prototype. When we actually do the printing, I'm putting some bids out for this now. It'll be more like this. It'll have
a smooth gloss,
shiny cover and heavier stock.
Because I know that some of the sheriff's cars have them in that are very durable.
Incidentally, the cover on this, I can pass this around, but Sarah Sherman did the cover work on this. So it's kind of nice.
Any other questions or comments? Sonny, was that the voice of experience speaking on the mapping there?
It's tough in the dark trying to find where you're going sometimes,
Most of us have GPS units now.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody understand
Mine tells me that I live down around the corner, too.
Everybody understand the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's unanimous.
Thank you, Ernie.
Thank you.
And those ones.
Thanks, Ernie.
You get two down along Lake Peninsula, you gotta turn back.
Oh, the toughest call of the day.
Half a mile, you gotta go in back there.
Next thing is the IT staffing, document imaging, server administration. Don, you're up. Page 23.
Hi, Don Sheehan, County IT Director. I know this isn't the best time to be coming and talk about staffing, but we have a lot of projects for the document imaging, and that's why the judges are here tonight. We've tried to continue to move forward with them, and basically we've not added any staff to our office since we started document imaging. We took one of our people who was a programmer analyst, and we've been doing less development on the AS400. And we started thinking that would be a part-time position, but it has gradually, actually within probably the first year or so, turned into a full-time position. And as we continue to add projects, we don't have the resources to do it. We're using a consultant, but what we're implementing is a workflow-based imaging system. So the documents flow into queues, they have timers, there's conditions, they move from person to person, and they've gone completely paperless. And so even if they change processes in an office, then we're back there having to rework the workflow so that it follows new processes. And as people learn how to use the imaging system or the capabilities, then they come back and also ask for more. Hey, I didn't know it could do this. Hey, can I do that now? I mean, they're signing documents, they're shipping them back and forth. And so I'm here asking, we have a person doing this right now who's defined as a programmer analyst. It's really not what I would say is the definition of their job any longer. I know classifications have been put on hold, so I don't know where that goes, but I'd like it looked at so that that person is evaluated as a document system administrator, really for the task that they're doing. And then the other side is to add some support there. I have one person who's doing project management, development, support. We've moved from, when we first started out, 65 users, we're up to 118 users. We're in 8 different departments. We're moving out in the courts, putting us into 3 counties. They have scanner-based issues, and a lot of it is critical. When they can't do something, they don't have any paper anymore. What do I do? Am I just going to sit here? And so it's a matter of supporting day-to-day operations, and that's really part of where we need it, and to free up Linda, who's doing the other system projects, to give her more time to focus on the development and implementation of the new projects. So the one area there then is reclassifying Linda's position and asking to add another document imaging support. I wouldn't say that person would be at the same level as Linda, and that's, that has not even been evaluated, and HR has not looked at that. I guess maybe I'd leave it there. That's why before I discuss the other position, and we could just maybe talk about the document imaging, and I don't know if the judges then wanted to say anything.
Good evening. My name is Cole Rogers. I'm here with Tom Power, Circuit Court Judges. We came to you over a year ago to talk about the digital transformation of our court into a completely paperless environment, and to do so in a fashion that not only saves staff, and we've kept our promise. We had a position that was open that we have not filled and have no intention of filling, and that we would produce revenue, and we are. Last month, in the only 2 case codes with which we will accept e-file documents currently, until things get fixed, we're generating, for the county, $2,400. So we're looking at, in a month. In a month. We're looking at $30-some thousand a year on 2 case codes. As far as Judge Power and I are concerned, we're ready to go to the rest of the commercial caseloads. We're ready to go to divorce, DOs, and DMs. We believe that we should be in a position by the end of this year that everything is up and running except criminal, and criminal isn't going to generate any money. That's just about completing the process and making it flow smoothly and making it all paperless. We were very fortunate in our selection of a vendor. We were careful in the interview process. There was a substantial competition for that. We picked a Michigan-based vendor, and they couldn't be more receptive. This is a highly competitive environment. The states just put out an RFP. They would like to be the winner. They respond to everything we ask them to do, and they get it done, and they get it done quickly. Our history with the county's IT department couldn't have been better. Outstanding people, great service. It came as a shock to me, I'm not going to speak for Judge Power, that it turned out the weak link in this system was the IT department. There aren't enough boots on the ground to get the job done. When Don talks about the number of users, he's talking about internal users. We've got 850 lawyers in these 2 case codes that are filing documents with us. We got lawyers trying to send us documents electronically that we don't want to receive electronically yet. We promised the clerks a garden hose, not a fire hose. Well, we're ready for a fire hose. I mean, we're getting no pushback from the attorneys. It's exactly the opposite. Now that they're up and running and they've created their electronic law firm and they're sending us things, they want to send us everything that way. And the difficulty is we have a punch list, and it's just not getting done. And worse, the district court's about to start a document program, and good for them. They should be. The probate court we haven't even talked about yet, and that's an e-file environment that would generate revenue. The friend of the court that's been doing on-base since 2008 needs some work done, upgrades, enhancements, fixes. The prosecutor's office does as well. I have no idea about county finance. They started at the same time as the friend of the court. These are ongoing systems that need to be improved. I mean, you spend money to make money. And whether you should add someone or whether they should be a supervisor, I'm not here to carry that brief. I would be content to try to do this on a contract basis with ImageSoft if that's what we had to do. But I think the reality of the situation is, on an ongoing basis, if we're going to have the district court fully digital, and the circuit court's going to be fully digital, and the probate court's going to be fully digital, I cannot imagine a future that doesn't have at least one person assigned to those courts just to service the software, just to keep it moving, just to make this whole thing effective. I mean, we've got one commissioner here who's doing everything on his laptop. That's the future. Our court is wireless. Lawyers walk in now with laptops. They don't bring in big briefcases anymore.
That's just the way it's going to be done. And we can get this done, and we can continue to be a leader in this, but we need bodies to, we cannot go another step. We are looking at losing Linda McGuire at the end of the month to start a district court project. So then we're going to have 2 half-baked projects instead of fully baking one. So we're here because we're frustrated. And it's worse. One of his folks retired and wasn't replaced, and she works 13 hours a week. Another one, I understand, will be getting married soon, sometime in the summer apparently, and leaving, and perhaps the second one. I mean, Don's been really good about this, but this is like the armored battalion moving out into the desert, and by the way, let's leave the mechanics home. Good luck.
Judge Power, do you have any comments?
Yeah, we,
Can you move the microphone over?
Okay. We have really one person who helps us with this document imaging workflow material, and that's Linda McGuire. There's nobody else. And we aren't getting stuff done. The punch list Phil referred to, I pulled out the January 30 list, and approximately a third of it's been done. That's from January 30 to now. And of course, there are things that have been added since then. We need another person or else to contract with contractors to get this done. And of course, in the meantime, there is now a commitment to the district court, which will also be a major document management imaging project. And I understand that the city is going to be starting here and will be going live on theirs May 15th, and the county has a substantial support role in that also. So there's we are not getting the things done that need to be done internally. This is not ImageSoft, the contractor. This is us. And now we're about to swallow some much bigger, some big projects, and I just don't see how it's going to work. And we're coming to a point where I know what we do. We've even explored about the possibility of just started checking into contracting. Maybe that's a way to do it. But another person, we don't need supervisors. We need another person or more resources to actually implement this this project internally in terms of the documents flowing around. And that's what we need.
And it generates money. Our project generates money.
Yeah, and Phil mentions these case codes. That's 2 of the general civil types of cases. Generally, contracts and personal injury are the 2 that are now being done. But all the rest of the civil stuff can come online once we get this straight. And then we can go to divorce, and those cases, those will pay. And if we're making $2,500 a month now, or $2,300 or whatever it is, it's going to be probably double that once we get into divorce and get all this implemented. And that's money to the county. I'm not talking about, there's also money goes to the vendor, but just the money that goes to the county, Grand Traverse County, not the other 2. So there's quite a bit of, I mean, there is revenue that comes out of this. But we can't, if we move forward at this time where we got a half-baked project, I mean, we're workarounds. I'm exercising our printer a lot because we don't, for example, we want, when there's a motion day, every Monday we have a motion day, which is a whole series of separate issues, case by case, a lot of paperwork, a lot of volume, but they're short proceedings, 5 minutes at a time. There's a lot of them. I need to have the papers that are filed by the 2 parties, and I need to be able to look at them. Ideally, I do it on a laptop, which I can take home and review, and then have on the bench. But we don't have that. We don't have what's called document association. Is that what that's called? Where we can associate the documents together so I can pull them up. So what I do is a workaround. I exercise the printer, I print out the things, and I put them in the numerical file, actual physical numerical file that I use right now that I've been using all along in the paper world. We're not fully digitalized because we can't, because of that punch list, the bulk of it still isn't done.
Part that's coming from the outside in is working well. And our ability to sign things and send them back out is working quite well. It's the internal management of the digital images among the people that used to handle pieces of paper. That's what's not working well. I mean, when this stuff is clicking, I was out of the country last fall, e-signing documents. They thought that somebody had hacked the system and was using my name. It was at 3:30 in the morning. It was 8:30 in the morning where I was. It's an amazing piece of technology. But in order to maximize its efficiency, there are identifiable things that need to be done. It's like building a house. We have a punch list. Just finish the list.
Jason?
Well, I think there's one adage that really makes sense here. And given the necessity of the IT department for all county operations, it would behoove us to not short it what it needs. And the adage, as it goes, is for want of a nail. And I support adding, if we need somebody, to add it, to make it work, to make it efficient, so that we can go forward. And it also takes a little pressure off other areas of the county. I think that's totally appropriate. The only thing I have a question: is it necessary to reclassify the position?
That's what I had.
This is one of these sore spots with us in the last year. Is it necessary to reclassify can we just add the position? Can we add a support position, and you can use whatever authority you have in your department to assign seniority or authority on projects?
Well, the support position is the brand new one, and that, Jen would have to look at that and see at what level we would feel that would fit. I know the reclassification I'm asking for is Linda's existing position, and the title of what she's doing in comparison to what she did before. They're really not in relation to each other any longer. I don't know. I would like to see it done, but I understand where you're at and what you've talked about in the past.
Yeah, my question is do we have enough capacity with our servers to be able to handle everything that you're going to be doing, and are we going to be looking at increasing more servers in order to provide all the services that we have?
Pretty much we have everything in place right now to run what we are doing, and district court should be able to come on without a problem. But we do actually have it in the budget this year to increase our storage and server environment. So that's already in the plans for us to do this year.
What is the possibility of contracting? I mean, is there services out there? Is there people out there that we could look at?
Yeah, my comment on that would be, we are using a contractor right now to help with that primary implementation. A lot of what we find, though, is a lot of it still ends up being learning back at the person's desk. Part of this with getting the motions for the calendar, you talk to people, say, well, this is how I put my documents together, this is how and then I do this. Well, yeah, and it was only a week ago we found, oh, well, I've been sticking some documents in the back, in these folders behind my desk, and it really takes someone internal to, we can contract, but it takes an internal person to also work with them in order to make sure that we're getting what we think we're getting. Sometimes you can just write it out and say, this is what we want, and they're going to give you exactly what you ask for. And what we're finding with the imaging, these are systems that get designed as they're being implemented. It's very difficult to analyze every step of the process before we go.
Is this a 1 year, a 5 year, or a 25-year position that we're looking at?
I think for the courts, you're looking at one person probably.
Permanent for?
Yeah, that would serve all the courts, not just our court, but all the courts.
Get the district court.
You're always going to be, in the paper world, we would call up IT because, there's some sort of macro we can do to make mediation work faster, or we need this little, there's always something.
Sure.
And I see between the three courts, it would seem plausible that you would need one person on a permanent basis, once all courts are fully digitized. But, that's going to be pretty self-supporting. If you look at the volume of paper that we receive and the fees associated with it, and we don't even talk about the other soft cost savings. At some point, those giant rotating things on the first floor of our building will be obsolete. They'll be gone. We'll stop buying paper jackets and metal clips. Done.
And I have other people in my office that can help out somewhat when Linda's here, but she takes vacation, she's going to be sick, and right now it's very difficult when, they call over, and there's a lot of very specific lingo that goes with the document imaging, and 3 different people may describe that process differently. And unless you're working with it and familiar with it, it's even hard, even when we have it documented, to say, is this the process you're talking, and is this what I would do to do a reset to get that going? So, I mean, we try, but we have called Linda when she's been on vacation and say, hey, this is what they're telling me. Is this the step that I would do to fix that? And so I think that support person who's sharing that same information with her gives us that opportunity for the backup support, too.
I mean, I'm a huge advocate for this, and I think it's a real thing, but I guess I'd have to hear what the administration and personnel would say as to whether or not they would recommend and how they would recommend to go about doing this.
On a short-term basis, we did look at what you're suggesting. We just started exploring, could we get the vendor up here on a short-term basis and get the punch list done? And maybe provide you some breathing room with regard to the staffing, because the reality is, if you authorize this, we're looking at a minimum 90 days before a human being is actually doing anything worthwhile.
I agree. So, that was the other question, is whether or not we could contract with their vendor, so, yeah.
Sonny?
Well, we're nearly 4 years into this since we started actually implementation of the wireless program. We started with the Friend of the Court, which we're all familiar with, or most of us are. I've heard nothing but positive comments from anybody about our move to this. Whether they're in this building, in the court building, or attorneys' offices throughout town, everyone is very excited about what we've done here. I think we all realized, and as we continue to expand this and talk about other departments, that we're going to get to where we're at right now.
Right.
That Don's no longer going to be able to handle it with the current staffing. Obviously, generally we handle adding staffing as part of our next budget. But we're still, 8 months away from that, so we don't necessarily want to do that either. So, I guess I, like Herb, want to hear from Jen and Dean about, where we would identify funding for this and those kind of things. I certainly support the likelihood that we should add someone in this position. Unlike some other commissioners, I don't have nearly the problem about reclassifying some people, because I know very well that we have people that are doing jobs that are significantly different than their job description is and what they did 5 years ago. And, I personally supported doing a reclassification. The county board did not. So, at this point, reclassification is a difficult thing to do. But, I still think we can certainly look at the likelihood of adding a support person, and I guess I would ask Dean and Jen for their input as part of this discussion.
Larry?
Okay, I basically feel the same. I had the discussion several months ago with Judge Powers and Don, and I don't recall who else was in that meeting, but we kind of knew this was coming in our direction sooner or later, and especially with the issue of some people possibly going on leave and possibly going else, and the ramping up of the imaging process and the revenue that we were going to get on it. I was supportive of it. I just wanted to make sure that, that we went back and reviewed the case for an additional person before it came to the board, and it sounds like Don has done that and the judges have done that. So unless I hear something contrary to that from Dean and Jen, I would be supportive of adding the extra FTE, but I would not be supportive of any classification changes until the board's ready to look at all positions for reclassification.
Is that a motion?
Dean? What's your opinion on this matter?
Addressing the additional FTE, I believe that we do need to do that. When we agreed to move to document imaging back in 2008, being one of the original departments that was part of that, we have benefited from that significantly. And I think we continue to hear that from the courts. There are departments that are waiting in line to do this. And at some point in time, we will be limited and the funding that we have to hire or contract with ImageSoft because of our budget considerations and concerns. But when you look at how the costs are spread amongst the departments, actually the per unit costs are going down as we add more users to the system. And we do have the other 2 counties that are supporting this. And the judges, I was looking at that revenue source that's coming in from the true filing. That will go a long ways towards probably supporting this position. We're just under 5,000 with 2 months, and as more cases, or I'm not sure what the terminology is, are added to that stream of documents coming in, there will be an added revenue source. The one caution that I have in all of this, Dawn Rogers had provided, and I don't want to put Dawn on the spot, and I know how Dawn fits into the court operation, but my caution, we cannot take on these projects as aggressively as we have been doing. I know the judges will probably be upset with me for saying that, but we need to make sure that what we're working on now works. And I know when you get into it, as Don said, there are things and changes that are made, and we've kind of already committed to the district court.
Right.
So I would not be supportive of working on one, circuit court and putting everybody else on hold. I think before we add anyone after district court, we need to make sure that we've got all of those components and imaging applications working the way they should be. And but I do support the additional FTE for the document imaging support. As Judge Rogers has explained, the plan all along was to expand this program, and the fact that we're able to do that, and it does reduce, it just makes the workflow in our department, it's had tremendous savings in time, and how we share that data or that information, or even with our auditors. So it is the way to go, and I do support the position, and we can fund that by charging it back to the departments that use it. There are places where we have federal grant reimbursement in the friend of the court and the prosecutor, and as we add more users to the system, and it sounds like we have the capacity to do that, the actual cost per unit go down. So I would be in support of the FTE.
Jen, did you have any comments regarding this issue?
Yeah, I will say that my office also uses OnBase, and it is a great tool and resource. It really is. Reclassifying versus adding a position, I think, are 2 different things. The board has said to put reclassifications on hold, but adding a position, we can certainly do to the staffing plan. I see that as being something different. Also, versus the idea of a contractor versus an employee, I think an employee, based upon all of the users that we have and the continuing aspect of this, is probably the way to go. A contractor could get us by for 90 days or so. But we would want to keep that training here at Grant, so that way it's there for future knowledge here within the county. So those are just
for the board's information, Dean graciously ran me a copy of our minutes from December 14th, 2011, and human resources on that particular day, number 3 in our minutes, job reclassification. We recommended not proceeding with job reclassifications at this time due to economic conditions, and the motion carried. So, Bob?
I would move to approve the addition of 1 FTE for document image support to the IT department.
Herb?
Yeah, I guess I would like to see you add into that we can contract for the next 90 days until somebody's up to speed to start this, to keep this process going, and to be able to, and then hire the person to be able to flow into that. Just it gives them some flexibility to be able to use whatever their needs are at this point. If that would be part of your motion.
I guess my comment would be, if you make the motion to hire the person, Don may have something in mind, Jen may have something in mind. This won't be approved until our board meeting next week. We would also have the opportunity next week to pull it off and enter into a contract. Maybe by then, Don could actually have some information about whether a contract is even possible, and if so, what kind of numbers that involves. You know, I wouldn't want to just automatically authorize the issuance of a contract without having some information to that regard.
We'll explore
You know,
that, we'll share them.
But I absolutely support the idea of adding the FTE, but I do understand it's probably going to take some time to fill that position, but I wouldn't be prepared to authorize a contract without some additional information.
So, one other question.
Go ahead.
Is it possible for us to have what is the projected cost to run document imaging for the whole Grand Terrace County, and what would it cost us to do it, and what kind of staffing would it take us to be able to get there? I mean, you know, sure, it's pie in the sky, but it's one of those things is that I think realistically, we need to know where we're going in the future of this thing. You know, like, we're pulling back, but can we go forward, and what would it cost us to do it? And can we have some real figures so that we can say, you know, this is really important for our community, and we're going to have to maybe invest into that, or we're going to take and eat an elephant and do it one bite at a time. So, you know, I would just be interested to have that kind of information if we can in the future. It doesn't have to be done next week, excuse me. No, I mean, I'm just, it could be done part of budget or something like that that we look at in the future.
That's the way you eat elephants.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we could take a look at some of the existing costs, and depending on how we would say this support can handle this many people and what we've been paying, and try and just do a kind of project that out and see what we could come up with.
That'd be nice.
When is the meeting when you're going to be considering this next, and we'll see if we can get this contract?
Next Wednesday night would be our regular board meeting.
Next Wednesday night,
I just wanted to say that I agree with Sonny that on this reclassification, I know that the vote was not to do any, but if we don't start making plans to reclassify where we need to, we're going to be in deep trouble in a short period of time.
Well, I think our conversation, if I remember correctly at the time, was because of budgetary reasons, we would take a look at it in our 2013 budget, which we approved the calendar tonight, so I guess that's when we'll look at it.
Right.
Rob?
I guess I'd like to have more of a higher level discussion on the electronic or documents, and you know, it seems like it'd be more efficient, and I guess from what we just our discussion tonight, it looks like it's costing more. I know that's not true, because I know it saves paper, it saves money. I sit on, you know, I chair the Statutory Finance Committee, and I see what we pay for toner, and it's big numbers going through. Do we have any actual numbers on what we're actually saving by doing this? Because it looks like we're spending more, but I know we're saving, especially in the long run.
In our court, we're saving $55,000 round numbers of wages and benefits on the one staff position. We do the full revenue on what we're receiving. We haven't really tried to quantify the savings in paper.
You got to move the microphone over. Judge, if you could move the microphone over.
We haven't really, tried to quantify the savings yet in paper and toner. The copy machine lasts longer, that sort of thing. But and it's difficult to quantify the actual efficiency savings. I mean, I will get a document that is sent from an attorney, and if there isn't any particular problem with it, I will receive, I look at that queue several times a day, it is signed and it's gone. And I thought there might be a little more pushback from citizens, attorneys, litigants within the area about, well, this is another $8, you're just picking our pocket sort of thing. I think they very quickly have realized they're not sending runners to the court. The clerks will tell you there's not any kind of congestion in the records office anymore for reasons I don't totally understand. Passports were moved over there. I think now with some of the freer time that the staff have, that they aren't putting stuff in jackets anymore, they're able to deal with the public on the passport requests, which are dramatically up, I'm told. Everybody just wants a passport now. So I think it's a perfectly legitimate question, and it's one we would like to be able to answer.
The other thought is, are you asking for enough?
I don't think so.
Okay.
You want the honest truth?
Yeah.
The honest truth is Linda McGuire gets hit by a bus or gets a better offer, we are totally screwed. Done, finished. He doesn't know anything about on-base, and nobody else in that office does either.
But we do have a contractor who at least is very familiar with the system.
That's good. Who is stretched really thin themselves right
Yes.
now.
That contractor is the person we talked to today and sent them a punch list and said, they said they'd look at it and would give us an idea of what sort of a commitment that would take and what sort of money we might be looking at. And that's the kind of thing maybe we can get for you next week, so you can have that, you know, and that, it's not as if you can just give it all to the contractor and our IT department walks away, because there has to be some IT involvement, even though the contractor's doing a lot of it. But anyway, we'll have a little better idea for you what that option looks like, hopefully within this week.
I'd like to have that discussion with you at budget time.
Yeah,
If we're going to go to
Right.
a system-wide digital program, countywide, not just for everything, the notion that we'd only have one or two people familiar with how to deal with the system in a milieu where you're not reclassifying, and these are very competitive positions, that's kind of scary. You could lose your staff overnight.
Well, you know, there's a lot of small businesses in town, we're, you know, in the same position, you know, we got to keep people in our business. What if we lose them? You know, it's something we all struggle with. But as a small business person, I look at this saying, I know there's a savings there. What in a perfect world, what would be our investment? What would be the return on that investment and the time frame for that? You know, I know it's not just that cut and dry, but those are the kinds of things I'd really like to see.
Try to do that for you at budget time.
But, and I also want to commend you. I mean, given, you know, well, I have the opportunity, you know, you guys are two major leaders in the courts over there, and to see you spearheading something like this and showing up tonight on your own time to promote this innovation is one of the reasons Grand Traverse County is a leader in our region, and I really want to thank you and applaud you for your efforts tonight.
Let's vote, it's not good to keep judges up too late.
Okay, does everybody understand the motion? Would you repeat the motion, please?
It's moved by Henschel. I believe it was Mr. Gilman that seconded it.
No, actually
Mr.
Herb,
Gilman, sorry.
I believe, did.
Thank you.
Herb, it was me, I think.
Yeah, it's Larry.
I heard it coming from that direction.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it was a double echo.
It was all over everywhere, so it doesn't
Approve the addition of one FTE to the IT department for document imaging support.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's unanimous. Thank you.
All right, thanks, judges.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you.
I don't know how my sport's leaving. I'd also like to talk about the server administrator. And we've always been really just I'm the director, and we have technicians, and we have telecommunications within the department. And so, you know, as we've grown for the county, even if the IT hasn't gotten really huge, I need to specialize someone more. And that's, you know, we have almost 40 servers now running in our environment. And 20 of them, or 19, in the last 5 years. And what I'm looking for is to be able to bring somebody in can fully support that server environment that's there. I mean, the document imaging servers, they brought in 6 servers, and they're all interlinked together. And we've had our fun trying, when something's gone wrong, where is the problem? And, you know, we talked to the vendor too, our contractor. We're not your network support person. We're not your server administrator. We're your software. Well, the software ends up getting tied together so tight that sometimes, you know, even though they tell us that, it is their issue. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's something else that we have going on. But it's been really hard because the technicians are the ones who, when we have those issues, get pulled off of their normal support of what they're doing for departments, and also feel like, you know, they don't really have the skills for some of it. The SQL database, which is where all of the indexing data, everything for the images are stored. It's where GIS maintains all of their data. We really need somebody to specialize in that area. And so what I'm proposing is that we would actually, I guess, take away one of the IT technicians and create this position. So I guess technically it's not a reclassification. And yet at the same time, I don't want to let anybody go right now either. So I don't know where to go with that. I mean, maybe somebody could shift into the document imaging support, but I don't know what the classification is. But
You want me to come in and do it for you?
Second that.
well, maybe not.
Excuse me for laughing.
I'll help him.
Yeah, and dispatch has been there with our police servers. We've got 6 servers in there, and our concern is that we end up with major issues. Our server environment's getting more and more critical. More and more people are affected by it. If a server goes down, what kind of productivity are we hitting against a group of people? And we even had one today where we were simply enlarging disks on the server. It was supposed to be a 4-hour job, kind of, hey, just sit over here and run. Well, the next thing, Windows updates, when they came through, the server wouldn't boot. The person ended up spending another 3-4 hours on with tech support getting that server up and running. In the meantime, the police department can't do their lien requests.
Now,
Jason?
So essentially, the server administrator would essentially be one of your IT techs if you were...
But I would look at a higher level position for that, bring somebody in with experience. And what I'd like them to do, in the long run, I'm hoping they would help us become more efficient.
So what you're asking us to do then is eliminate one IT tech position and create the server administrator position.
Right.
And that would serve you. What's the difference in cost of those particular?
We haven't evaluated the position to see where it should be. We looked at it at one time. I would like to see, a higher level classification and more experience.
Could we get some cost analysis and have it brought back?
Yes.
I think that would be probably appropriate then.
Herb?
Now, where are we going with cloud computing? Is that possible in the future? Is that what we're looking at or not?
Yeah. Well, when we went Google, we went to the cloud.
Right.
So, that was an application that went out there. Definitely it's moving there for more types. We have to really analyze that. A lot of people are not real comfortable yet in being, ensuring their data is secure, number one, and then also that what happens if that vendor that you're hosting with goes out of business? How portable is your information to move it to another cloud vendor and making sure that your data didn't go away when that vendor went away? There's definitely a lot of discussion on that. And, we had one of our police vendors that proposed a cloud-based application, and they just said, there's no way we're going to consider putting that data out there yet.
You're going to go there.
But, eventually it will probably all go there. Whether that's 10 years down the road, it's going to go there. And internally, really, we're running this virtual server environment, and that's what they kind of call that a little bit of an internal cloud, because we can make these servers and move them around. We're not quite ready, or we have to wait for the right application. There's building inspection applications out there that are completely web-based and hosted external. So I think as we look at each application, it's definitely an option to consider.
Good. Larry?
I guess the question for Jen is that, in essence, is the request to create a new position within the county, and then someone within his department can apply for it, or somebody outside the county can apply for it? So we get away, and then they can interview and then make their decision on who gets that position. Then you don't get into the issue of, well, you really just reclassified the thing and we're just going to have an avalanche of people coming in. Tell me what the difference is. Is there a distinct difference here?
No. Honestly, you're basically reclassifying somebody. If you're going to post it and then not fill the other position, then you're asking someone internally to take the reclassified position. In essence, that's what you're doing, to be honest. I think, if you wanted us tonight Don and I to work on what a position would look like, what it would cost, we could certainly bring that back to you for next month. But unless you're adding and then removing is basically reclassifying somebody.
But if they're not at the same level of what they're doing and my people aren't qualified for the position, then I'm not sure it would be the same thing.
So like a current IT technician not being qualified for the server administrator?
Right.
It'd be coincidental.
So then you wouldn't be filling internally?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
So we're going to lay somebody off?
Well, I know, that's, you know.
We're going to add staff.
These are the type of discussions I think that need to take place. If we're,
Yeah, if you were to talk to my IT technicians, they'd tell me to add this one as another new position and keep all the ones I have now. I mean, that's what they, you know.
Maybe you'd advertise for a
and I'm
new
not going to
position.
completely disagree, because they're all feeling very overwhelmed with how much we're trying to support and do, but I also understand the economics of where we're at. And I don't know whether a technician could move into the document imaging support area so that I could have this new position and not add another.
At the same time, though, we are now adding an FTE for this other position, perhaps one of those IT tech people. I mean,
Yeah, I know. I wish there was an easy, smooth way. I don't know. I mean, I guess that's.
I do too. I don't, I think it's a slippery slope to have other departments in front of you asking for the same thing. I guess that's my
Create the new.
overall, opinion, whether, I know Don's staff is working hard. I know that OnBase has brought a lot of efficiencies to my department, and the servers are being added. But I guess other departments, this would open the door for other departments to do the same thing, and whether that's right or wrong, and whether reclassifications, it's pretty close to a reclassification type request. But if you were to add a staff to John's budget, that wouldn't be, you'd be adding a staff person versus adding and deleting at the same time. Because it's basically what a reclassification is. You're just reclassifying somebody higher, and you're not backfilling for that person.
So.
That makes sense?
If I can just do a response to that. So is it my understanding that if you kept the present staff, and you created a new position within the county, and we just went with the protocol of what we normally would do when we add a new position into the county, then that would not be a reclassification issue?
Right. It's in essence what you just did with the OnBase position.
All right, okay.
But, it might, warrant further discussion between, Don and I, if you wanted us to bring back what it might look like. I don't know if Dean had any thoughts on it.
I think that's the issue that I have with this. I'm not sure what that server administrator's duties and responsibilities will be. If it's going to be very similar or just somewhat of an upgrade over a technician, I'm in total agreement with Jen. It looks more like a reclassification. And I think Don and Jen need to probably hash some of that out, or try to determine what those duties and responsibilities will be. And it sounds like it's a higher level of service and responsibility. And I don't spend a lot of time looking at other classification plans around the state, but I would think that this position would exist in another IT department. But I really think we need to give Don and Jen a chance to evaluate it.
I do have a comment on what Jen stated there. She said, I believe you said, that it would be opening the door for another department to request the same. Well, I think I would have to disagree with that if I understood Don correctly. Yeah. Because the service administrator is responsible for the servers, and like he was talking this afternoon, when you have something happen, I won't call it catastrophic, but it very well could be. But when you can't run lean for 3-4 hours because you got an internal problem, and perhaps it's due to some personnel, I don't see another department having that problem where they're affecting or could affect several departments, particularly the courts. But I agree that we need to have you and Don get together and come back and do some explaining to the board, I guess. Rob?
Well, I'm certainly not ready to make any vote on anything until we get a little more specifics at least, but, the allegory you gave, would that have been prevented if we had somebody with a title of server administrator? Because, my place of business, which is certainly much smaller, but the server administrator is the same guy that's, sweeping the floor and, cutting the checks and, doing everything else, so.
You're in business too, don't you?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it may not have been completely different, but I would have had a person that was more knowledgeable to be able to deal with that, and it also wouldn't have taken away from what somebody else should be doing, because that is their task.
Yeah.
And, that's what we really got, as other departments, have reduced staff, they're looking for efficiencies, they're adding these servers, they're adding software, and it just keeps coming in, and to me, it's the opposite of what's happening in IT. We're getting more work, we're not getting less work.
Yep.
And I'm trying to find the best way to look at it. Yeah, and I'm not even, I think at some point maybe an analysis of our department and our structure would not be a bad thing, to come in and say, hey, it's been this long, and maybe you should be looking at how you're set up there. We don't really have a help desk. We distribute that across, the technicians assigned to departments. Maybe we'd be better in that area. This is one area that I know that I need somebody, and typically, in a larger department, they would have someone that would fill this role.
Well, it's no secret, I'm a huge proponent of leveraging technology for efficiencies. I get what question in my mind through this whole discussion is, could we, because the nature of IT is so project-based, it's project to project, we're going to do this and then we're going to do this, and a certain portion of it is simple upkeep, running the scans on the servers and making sure things are upkept, but a lot of it is project-based. Could we perhaps leverage contracting out in place of adding more permanent staff? Maybe we could put out an RFP, hire in some local companies that work really cheap.
We could look at that. Again, it's to me, it's good to have one person who is knowledgeable of the internal structure, because it's very hard to bring in a consultant and have them help define that structure, and especially if I have to bid out that service every year or every 2 years, I could be getting somebody completely new in here. And that's the harder part. And there's a lot of these things we learn, those document imaging servers, that there's 6 of them, and they're all interrelated with certain services running on them. I'm not saying you couldn't get a contract, I'm just not sure I'd get the same continuity of service.
It's a struggle to balance, I understand.
Yeah. And we do contract for network services. We've really kept that pretty much outside for all of our firewall support and that. And that way, we have someone internal who knows a bit, but we rely on them for the expertise there.
Well, I'm inclined to think you can paint this thing any way you want, but if you eliminate one position and you just make another position and you're changing the function, particularly if you're even considering hiring someone from within your department, all you've done is a reclassification. I don't care, that's just the way that is. I don't disagree that we probably need someone to take care of the servers. There are a lot more, there's a lot more issues, they're a lot more complex in how they interlink to each other, without question. I guess my suggestion would be, let's move forward with the FTE that we've approved tonight, and then let's see a proposal in the 2013 budget for a server administrator. And then come back with, we're already into the 2013 budget process. Let's look at that as something that is a priority. If that's in your department is the priority, then let's look at that as part of the 2013 budget.
Good suggestion.
Just one last thing. I don't see it as reclassifying. It's one thing if you take somebody's position, somebody who has a position, you say, okay, you're now a server administrator. That's reclassifying. I see it differently. We're literally adding the position and we're removing the other. Anybody within the department or outside, frankly, could apply for the position. And that's the way we have to look at it. I don't think it's a reclassifying at all. I think it's proper management of the department, but it doesn't necessarily take anybody's position in the department and say, okay, well, you're doing this, so we're going to call you something else. I think there is a difference. So.
Another thing I think we could look at in Don's memo to us, it speaks, and I believe the judge also spoke to it, where they may lose 2 people, absolutely going to lose 1 later on this year, perhaps 2. So consequently, if we were to honor his request and add the server person as a new position, instead of laying somebody off, because that's not going to help him either. He's already behind the 8 ball.
Well, but you got to bring that to
Through
me.
attrition or something.
You got to bring that to me with a lot better plan about what it's going to cost, what that person's responsibilities are going to be, and
Well, yeah,
those
he
kind
would
of
do
things.
that.
I can't do that.
Yeah, he would do that. But I'm saying that's another way of looking at it, rather than just saying, well, if we add one, we're going to chop one. You know, if we're going to do it, we could do it through attrition. Because it's already April, and if you're talking August or September, that isn't very far off. Food for thought.
All right.
Okay, I guess we're all set, Don.
Thanks,
Okay,
Tom.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Brownfield EDC, granting of an easement, Grand Traverse Commons. I understand Gene's gonna give us a little talk on that.
Gene and Ray are going to dazzle us.
Good evening. Gene, did Ray have a little presentation he wanted to make also at this time? Okay.
You may want to talk about this.
Good evening. My name is Jean Dorenzi with I'm Deputy Director of the Grand Traverse County Planning and Development Department. The request before you today, we are asking that it be brought directly to your County Board of Commissioners meeting on April 25th. And I'd like to go over the issue with you if that's okay. The issue before you is requesting an easement between Building 50 and the Evergreen Cottage. And this would allow for a parking pedestrian plaza, but that would allow for a new entrance into Building 50. And this would be for a new high-end independent senior living and assisted living redevelopment in Building 50. It would bring $25 million of private investment, 25 new jobs, and as important, it would finish Building 50, 388,000 square feet of redevelopment of historical Building 50. That is very important to the businesses that are currently occupied in Building 50 and the residents, and also the other buildings that are at the Commons that need to be redeveloped at all. But the other component that I outlined in your packet is basically looking at the impact to the Grand Traverse Pavilions. The Grand Traverse Pavilions is a county-owned facility that operates a skilled, long care and assisted living apartments. Grand Traverse County is in a very unique position of not having to provide any general fund appropriation to the pavilions. Public Act 280 requires that the county must take any indigent seniors into the skilled nursing facility. Therefore, the Medicaid would be the source of funding for that, the care for those indigent. And that Medicare and Medicaid does not cover all of those costs. So to offset those non-self-sustaining, the pavilions have operated in assisted living apartments to offset that cost. Another component is that there's 2 bond issues that are out under the county's full faith and credit for the cottages at the pavilions, and those annual payments are $600,000, which are paid by the pavilions by the revenue generated by the cottages. The DHS board met in special session on April 13th and requested additional information from the Cordia Group to ask to really see and negotiate to see if there's a way that we can mitigate the risk of any general fund appropriations to the pavilions and see if there's a way that we can work together on health-associated issues. And we met, actually we had a conference call probably 4 hours ago, and very favorable discussions were received, and recommendation will be presented to another special DHS board meeting on April 23rd. And we believe that a full recommendation will be able to be presented to you on the 25th. we being the Minervinis, the DHS board, have really worked with the Cordia Group to really protect and mitigate any risk on the pavilion side and in turn, Grand Traverse County's general fund operation. Corey Hansen, the CEO of the pavilions, is here. Mary Maroy, who is the chairman of the DHS, is also here. And Ray and Raymond Minervini, who owns Building 50, is here as well. The Cordia Group is a group out of Boston. It'll be a great senior living center for Building 50. We believe there's a win here. We just need a little bit more time to be able to go back to the DHS board to bring a recommendation to you on the 25th. And I'm asking for your consideration of that.
Jason?
What I'd like to see is some measure of consistency from this board. We have an opportunity to advance economic development. We have an opportunity to raise property values and collect more taxes. We have an opportunity to save money in the taxpayers by releasing something from liability, our property, I guess, And I'm not talking about this project, though this project would do the same thing. As a board, this board still has yet to approach another issue where we have created a liability, where we have caused property values to decrease, and I think we can correct them if we approach it consistently. Now we have people who are willing to develop property around property that we have no use for, frankly. Granting the easement I don't think is a real problem. However, I'd like to see some consistency from this board. I'd like to see those people on the board have their riparian rights restored.
Can't happen.
You can't have it. See, he says you can't have it.
It's a statutory matter.
It's a statutory matter that we cannot assign or give property to somebody? Isn't that what we're being asked to do?
You keep bringing up them dams, and that's a decision that was made 3 or 4 years ago. And it was
and I disagree with the decision, and I'm going to bring it up, sir.
Good, because I'm going to knock you down.
Excuse me.
Larry?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to defer this item to the county board meeting on April...
Your board meeting in April
Week from
25th.
tonight.
25th. Support.
Okay, everybody understand the motion?
Gene, could you maybe put it a little more kindergarten terms, exactly what you're asking us to do?
I'm asking you to allow that a recommendation come right to you on the 25th. The special DHS board meeting is on Monday,
Okay.
2 days before your meeting. We will be able to email out a recommendation to you, but it will not be in your packet. We're asking for you to consider it at your board meeting.
Okay, and the recommendation is regarding this easement.
Right.
And just refresh our memories, what's an easement?
They will be building, we own some property between Evergreen and Building 50. They want to build on our property, a pedestrian parking lot.
Okay.
Sidewalk.
So it'd be an easement in perpetuity, so we can, have shared parking spaces and an entrance into Building 50.
So we're basically signing a contract that says they can use our property indefinitely, forever, for the purpose of this parking lot and pedestrian walkway.
Correct.
Thank you.
Herb?
I think we should note also that used to be, I think, Green Drive, and Green Drive went through there, and that line was arbitrarily set when they did the boundary lines, and they didn't have any reason to put it other than it was just right down the middle. And so that arbitrary line is what we're trying to decide whether or not they can build a parking lot and they need that parking lot on that spot in order to have that become their main entranceway for their facility. And you need to have handicap parking spots right outside, and the pavilions will use some of that. But, but I think that the discussion still has to come from DHS as to whether or not they would wish to be able to grant the easement, and their recommendation then would come to us, and then we would have to either agree or disagree with their recommendation.
Right. Well, I think we should note, though, it's not just they will need the parking spaces, we need the parking spaces.
Well, we'll get
we do not have adequate parking at Evergreen Cottage already.
Right.
We don't, any parking there has to be on the street. There's no handicap parking at Evergreen Cottage.
Right.
I was by there the other day just to look, because my memory was there wasn't any handicap parking there. So, as we talk about handicap parking, which is our facility, we have no handicap parking for an assisted living cottage that's owned by Grand Traverse County. We don't have a handicap parking space in front of it.
Jason?
I'd like to continue where I was interrupted. My point is this. This is property that is owned by the citizens of Grand Traverse County. If we're going to be consistent and we're going to release to a private enterprise for economic development, we ought to at least consider releasing something that was assumed. And I'm not talking about stopping the project of the dams. That's water over, under something. What I'm talking about is consistency here. We've got liability that we can eliminate from the county's rules. And we have a potential property tax windfall down the road. And it goes with both of these things. It's a win-win-win. Yet there's no consistency on the board, and because some disagree that or some think that 3 years ago it was decided. Fine, it was decided 3 years ago. We can change our minds on these things to remain consistent. I'm just saying this needs to be considered, and at any opportunity like this, where this kind of thing comes up, this is a great place to talk about this kind of thing. This is a very good launching point, and I think for the economic well-being of those people who for decades assumed that they had a particular right to the water, I think we need to consider it. I support this, but unless we're willing to consider that, I can't vote for it, because I don't think it's consistent.
Okay.
I truly think that
we have the motion.
it is two separate issues, and there will come a time when we talk about the end results of the drain property. That there will come a time when the disposition of that property is determined.
Right.
Mr.
That
Chairman?
it has nothing to do with this issue.
A point of order. We're not discussing the motion that's on the floor.
Right.
I noticed that.
Point of order, I am discussing the motion on the floor. I'm discussing it, and I'm using it as a point on another issue, and trying to ask this board for some kind of consistency. That's exactly what I'm asking for. This is what this is about.
No,
we're talking about dispensing of public property. That's what we're talking about.
No,
Motion is to refer the item to the board
We're referring
meeting.
this to next week's meeting. That's the motion. It's not to discuss the process.
Okay. Everybody understand the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Roll call.
Commissioner Inman.
Yes.
Lemko.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yep.
Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am.
Gilman.
No.
Henschel.
Yes.
Chairman Fleece.
Yes.
All right.
Thanks, Gene.
Thanks, Mary, for coming.
Okay, next item on the agenda is Central Dispatch, Central Tower PSIC grant. Jamel, have at it. I see you brought your worthy assistant.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Ray had asked if he could have public comment, and I didn't know if he was going to wait around for public comment or if he wanted to say something then, so. Okay, all right.
I asked him twice,
Okay.
Yeah.
you know.
Jamel Anderson, the Director of 911 for Grand Traverse County, and you provided an agenda item in the packet. which I'm going to modify just a little bit. A portion of that was a request for funding for 2 shelters for the amount of $60,000. And that issue will have to be addressed in the future, but I want to postpone that. We're looking at some other options that maybe we can reduce that cost somewhat. So I'd like to focus on the tower proposal.
Okay.
The tower is over 24 years old. We had it inspected in 2008, and there were issues with the tower then. It's kind of teetering over just a little bit to the north, and
Leaning
that's
tower.
technical terms there. Just normal wear and tear for a 24-year-old tower. Paint is peeling, and some of the bolts are rusty. Some of the cross members were bent at that time. And as a result of that inspection, we had a reanalysis report done. We were hoping that we could, we needed to know exactly where we were with the tower. What can it hold? What can it not hold? And we could not modify it at that point to take on any more than it already did. So we're at a point where we're not going to be able to utilize the most critical component of our infrastructure to take advantage of the improvements and upgrades provided through this PSIC grant. The tower just isn't capable of housing that equipment. The agenda item told you that we attempted, and Jason tried to find another company that might be interested in putting a tower up and partnering with us somehow to make this a little easier process, but there just isn't the interest at this time to do that. So we put out 2 RFPs, and that was done so we could break that down and hopefully recognize some cost savings in doing it that way. And the tower was spec'd out to accommodate not just the anticipated needs for public safety, but also included some cellular frames so that hopefully we can generate some income, which hopefully would be dedicated to central dispatch technology improvements in the future. The first RFP was for tower purchase and delivery, and you have a list of the bidders there. We were recommending Valmont, and the reason why we are recommending that bidder, they are not the low bidder. Northern Tower was a low bidder, and they are a local company. However, we had used them for a project that was a 2008 inspection and had a lot of difficulty. And I would not recommend using them again. The Skywaves and Allstate, the tower that they put in their bid is not as good a quality as the one that Valmont put in their bid. So we are requesting to go with Valmont with that one, and we also included some money, for contingency money for foundation design changes, etc. So total for that one would be $65,000. For the tower installation and removal, the second bidder was SBA Communications. The second highest bidder, we're recommending to go with them. And that totals $90,537. I have to say, when I redid these, it was very late this afternoon, and I usually have Dean go over all my figures just to make sure I didn't make any errors. I think they're correct, but they might need to be adjusted a tad bit. Excuse me. So the Valmont Industries bid was $51,700. I'd like to add a contingency of $13,300 for a total of $65,000. And the SBA was $90,537 with a contingency of $21,463 for a total of $114,000. We would like to include $3,000 to cover permit costs, and we really are not sure exactly what we might need there. And then we also have a significant issue with the access to Central Tower, which we've discussed in the past. So the total funding request is $192. And Dean and I spoke, and he can identify some options for you.
What was the total cost, Jamal?
$192.
How did you get to that?
Let me jump in here. I'm going to save Jamel's voice, if that's okay. Jamel and I did discuss this afternoon, and even though the document that you have on page 32 has a total cost of $253,000, that includes 2 shelters that they would like to do, but as the county administrator and your finance director, I am very concerned about how far we go with this project. I mean, there's no doubt I would like to do all of this, but I think the primary concern, as Jamel and Jason and I discussed, is the tower replacement. And when you factor some of the other things here, I know she didn't mention, if we make the upgrades on the current tower, which would be just the UHF links, which is really not where we want to go, because that technology basically runs out here at the end of the year, and we don't want to incur that $100,000 cost on technology that's going to be outdated by the time you complete it, basically. But the other component was the grant funding that gives us the equipment that we need, but we simply don't have the ability to place it on the current tower. And these costs were anticipated in the 2012 budget, but we simply could not find a way to fund them at the time. And what I was trying to do, and Jamel did agree, and she may be upset with me, but I was trying to get this cost down to under $200,000. And that's taking out the shelters, which are a cost of $60,000. And if you add up all of the numbers, commissioners, to get to the $253,000, it's the $65,000 for the tower purchase, the $91,000 for the installation and removal of the equipment on the existing tower, the $23,926 for the possible foundation work, and then the $3,000 and $10,000 amounts listed there halfway down on page 32. Those total $193, and to get to the $253 was adding in the $60,000 for the shelters. The recommendation did not include the funding options that you could consider, or that I would ask you to consider, because to be quite frankly honest with you, I did not have a plan when we put this together. You know, we had just received our equalization report last week, and I was very much concerned with how our tax revenue would look. I have more comfort this week knowing that we did not take a major hit like we had done the last 2 years. This is still a big cost, and I asked Jamel and Jason to explain the need to do this. I think she has done that in her document. And obviously, this is a large project. There are, I believe, other towers that have issues and that may require some work, but this is the main tower in the system. The way that we could fund this, I would recommend 2 appropriations in the general fund that we could reduce. One is the child care fund. We have funded that fairly consistent with our 2011 budget, and we had a very good year in 2011. I believe we could reduce that by $100,000 without any problem at all. And I also have completed our insurance billings this week, and we have over budgeted our insurance costs in the general fund that we appropriate back to the insurance fund by $100,000. So going to the 253, I didn't quite have that much comfort. I believe we can look at those shelters at another time, or if the costs on this tower work come in lower than these numbers, we could potentially look at one of the shelters based on when we have, you know, more firm costs on, I guess, deconstruction and, you know, the setup of the new tower. And that would be my recommendation, that we scale this back a little bit to try to control the cost and limit it to the tower piece at this time.
And I just wanted to also point out that we currently use telephone circuits and pay a lot of money every year, and so we save at least $20,000 a year for not having to use those. And the other benefit is would provide us with remote monitoring of the tower site. And right now, we don't have that, and some of the problems that we have aren't as apparent to us as they would be if we were able to do that.
Jason?
You talk about remote monitoring, so the microwave link is a high-speed data link then? And that would accommodate transmission of video, what have you as well, do you think? When you say monitoring, or what are you talking about?
If there are problems with the tower, we can disable it from central dispatch, and we have better control over what's going on at the tower site than we do now.
Herb?
Yeah, I guess I have a problem that we're not going to Northern. I know we might have had some problems 4 years ago, but, I would really want to interview them to find out if they've corrected their problems. I mean, that's a savings right there, that you could almost buy your buildings with by saving, by going to Northern Tower to do both of the tower installation, removal, and the purchase and delivery. Is it the same quality tower, or is it just the quality of the workmanship?
Northern is one of the few vendors that bid on both the tower purchase and the installation. Northern, Skyways, and Allstate, Northern and Skyways both bid a Nello brand tower, and Allstate bid a Allstate tower. In talking to people that are knowledgeable, more knowledgeable than I in some of these areas, you want to go with a reputable company, obviously, someone, a bigger name, and certainly you're talking about something that you want to be there for 50 years or better. But Belmont's a very well-known, reputable company out of Indiana. And so we certainly wanted to go with something that was of higher quality, or at least been in the business a lot longer. The Nello brand had mixed reviews. So we certainly didn't want to pursue something that had mixed reviews.
After reading this and then listening, I think you need to rebid this. I don't think you should have written the specs around what you wanted, not just let anybody throw anything in, because I agree with Herb. If Northern Tower is a local company, they're here in Traverse City, Grand Traverse County?
Yeah.
I don't, and I disagree with the way you had it in two bids. It's been my experience that a lot of times, if you got one company doing the total project, you can get a much better bid than you can by separating it.
And the reason we split it up like that is cost-saving measure. If I'll give you an example. The Grant Tower folks, they bid both projects as well. And Grant Tower also bid the Belmont brand tower, the same exact specs, same exact tower that Belmont bid. And Grant Tower's price was $57,000 versus Valmont's price of $51,000 for the exact same tower. So I believe that splitting it up like that saved us that 10% markup.
Well, in the world of bidding, you write the specs, and if it's a, what's the name of the tower you're talking about?
Belmont.
Did Belmont bid?
Yes.
A Belmont?
Right.
Is that a horn going off?
If you want that tower, that's what you write the specs on. Just don't name it. And there's got to be a lot of labor involved here, too. And if a company's after it, like, say, Northern, for example, if they want it bad enough, they can bid the Belmont Tower with maybe a lower rate and still do the project.
We did write the RFPs with specifications in terms of what we wanted for equipment on the towers, how tall the tower had to be, FAA compliancy, et cetera. So everyone that submitted a bid did comply with those specifications. The RFP was also detailed, it had a list description of labor costs versus installation versus antenna installation, et cetera. And I can tell you that Northern's bid was very competitive in all areas except for labor. They were significantly reducing their labor costs, so that's where they were saving their money for having a lower cost, their bid price. So well, I guess what you're saying is you want it detailed. We did detail it out. We did have them submit line items detailing specific costs for specific items, and the majority of their cost savings or their lower bid was in labor.
Yeah, but, no, you're missing my point. What's the name of the tower that Northern bid, the brand name?
Nello.
Dell?
Nello.
Nello.
What's the brand name that Belmont bid?
Belmont.
Belmont. There has to be differences in the specs of those towers, and I'm sure Sonny is in that business. You got tensile strengths, you got all kinds of differences. If you guys wanted a Belmont tower, then you write the specs around the Belmont tower and see where it comes in.
I do know, I understand what you're saying. We didn't specifically want a Belmont tower. Sabre makes a good tower. They just happen to be another $6,000 more than Belmont. So there's a number of reputable tower companies out there. We just don't think Nello is one of those. That's all.
I know, but what are you basing that on? I think if we invited Nello in here in Belmont, I think you'd be hard pressed to prove that point, particularly when you didn't specify it. I sincerely believe that maybe you ought to consult with somebody and rewrite those specs. You know, it's like writing lawnmower specs, if you will. You want a lawnmower, but you don't specify if you want 1 blade, 2 blades, or 3 blades. So you get the bids in and you look and you say, well, what I really wanted was 2 blades, and they're $9,000 higher, so I'll take that one.
But what, Larry, what Jason's saying is we did say we wanted however many blades on our lawnmower, but we just didn't say what brand of lawnmower, basically. We said, this is what we want, you tell us what you can provide that meets those specifications. And I don't know if...
Well, then Delmont has, or Nello, I mean, has to meet the specifications.
Okay, I can, another analogy would be a Craftsman 18 horse and a John Deere 18 horse. I'm not buying a Craftsman. You know what I mean?
No. Specs are specs.
You want 18 horses is 18 horses. I guess I don't understand what you're saying, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I understand what he's trying to say. Essentially, it's like this. The towers are rated for what, 150 mile an hour, 180 mile an hour?
They had to conform with the Rev G.
Okay, so they have to conform to a particular status, okay? And his point is that if, for them to bid and be appropriate, it had to meet those particular specs. And I understand what you're talking about, John Deere or Craftsman. However, we also are talking about warranty. Do we get a 30-year warranty? Do we get a 25-year warranty? Do we get a 50-year? Are all of the warranties the same? Are they going to back up the tower 25 years from now? I think that's a question you ask them. You know, the thing is, will it do the job? If it'll do the job and it's nearly $10,000 less, well, that's a pretty significant savings, you know, from the way we see it. And it has the benefit of being a local provider. That's an additional benefit that is even beyond this. We're talking almost $200,000 in our local economy. So, you know, I mean, this is something that we have to take very seriously, and I agree. I think we should probably reassess these bids, or at least clarify that these are coming in at the same specifications. I mean, you know, you can say it's a John Deere or a Craftsman, but again, based on 4-year-old experience, you know, or experience from 4 years ago, I think it's hard to say that one particular company might not be able to provide it. If they say they're going to provide it, we have them warranty that they're going to provide it. And that's what we expect. And the bid is significantly less, and it's local. You know, it's hard for me to see going with the higher cost out-of-town guys.
You know, I'll give you an analogy that I saw on my way to the meeting tonight. In front of me was an automobile, a foreign-made automobile, a Toyota to be exact. But it had the name of a local winery on the back of it. A reputable local winery. And I thought to myself, I wonder what they would say if we recommended Japanese wine. Now, why wouldn't you want to recommend Japanese wine over Grand Traverse County wine? Why? Where does the profit go? Who stays employed? The people in Grand Traverse County. You can drink the Japanese wine. It may or may not be as good, but the profit for that product goes to Japan, just like the car he was driving. The profit for that automobile, even though it may be made in America, assembled in America, I should say, the profit goes abroad. And I feel very strongly about keeping the business local unless there's a significant reason why we shouldn't. And you're looking at almost $20,000 here. I think we should rebid it. I really do, and the specifications should be tightened up. Or accept the low bid.
You got Sonny, Mayor.
Sonny?
Well, I'm not sure that you have to rebid it. I think you've probably detailed it enough with your specifications that you can bid it. You know, I can send out bids for patrol cars and I'll get prices from multiple vehicles, everything from Fords to Chargers to Chevys, you know. But the fact is, I would like to really have an analysis of the local vendor compared to the other's recommendation. That tells me why it's important that I go with the other recommendation, because, you know, Northern Tower has been in business in this community for 50 years. You know, they're not somebody that just started in the tower business in the last 6 months. They, I believe, still own the highest tower in Grand Traverse County, you know, on their own property. You know, I certainly would like to see you show me why I shouldn't go with that company compared to another company. I'm not saying that they will, but one's better than the other, but I certainly would like you to show me something specific why that tower is inferior or their warranty isn't as sufficient. You know, I'm not comfortable with doing it the other way. Now, is it anticipated that you will put up the new tower before decommissioning the existing central tower? Because I was kind of caught up with this idea about the foundation changes, you know, how you were going to leave the other one on the foundation and you know, put it up. So in other words, we'll be erecting the new tower, and then some of the equipment, not all of the equipment from the existing tower will be transferred, or basically none of it will be transferred to the new tower.
Pretty much none of it.
That was another question I had. How can there be differences, and Sonny brings up a very good point, how can there be differences in the foundation? The specs for that foundation, when it's bid, should be that that's fully capable of having that tower installed on it and withstanding whatever. I don't understand, and I forget what the difference was.
That's going to test on all kinds of soil borings and all different kinds of things. So you're not going to get that engineering until you in fact do that site work. You're not going to get an engineer to sign off on specifications for the foundation until the site work is actually prepared and they've done soil borings on that tower. because,
was
you know,
exactly why.
I don't know what your clay concentration, what your stone concentration is gonna be, and you're not gonna get a foundation spec until you've actually done site work on that site. And no engineer is gonna sign off on that to put a tower 300 feet in the air.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to defer this item until such time as staff can either rebid or bring back more supporting information for the recommendation.
Support.
Is there any more discussion? Herb?
Yeah, my question is on the easement. We already have an easement. Are we paying additional money for this? I don't understand that easement.
The easement that we currently use is off of River Road through a gravel pit, which is a significant distance and grade increase from River Road up to where that plateau is, where the property is. When the tower was built, South Creek subdivision was not there. It was a farm, I believe. And there happens to be a DTE easement between two lots that goes directly to that 40-acre parcel that the tower's on, that you can throw a rock. I mean, it's
awesome.
And now we have to call county roads. Literally, they have to go grade the road sometimes before we can send repairmen up there. It's quite a trip. If you want to go, I'll take you in my Suburban.
That's fine. I just didn't understand
Right,
what the
and
easement
we're
was. so.
working on that with the homeowners association at South Creek and DTE, trying to get that worked out.
Okay.
You know, I remember that topic come up several years ago, and I thought we had secured an easement through South Creek.
No, the homeowners association, there are a couple of residents there that I had spoken with at that time, and then Bob Cooney had written a legal agreement that I had submitted to DTE and was working with a gal there, and it kind of got put on the back burner for a while. So she is working with me again now, and I've been working with the homeowners association representative instead of directly with the residents in trying to just get that to happen.
Larry?
Well, I think one way to resolve this issue is to ask Northern Tower for a list of recent customers that they have dealt with that would be somewhat close to what we're trying to accomplish, along with a list of customers that that the recommendation's for, and let's see if there's any differential.
I think that's the gist of Rob's motion is supporting documentation, so. Okay, everybody familiar with the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
All right, we'll be back.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Fun times.
Okay, the next item is finance. Mr. Bott?
We have our general fund information through March 31st, 3 months of our current fiscal year, which is a calendar year. And if you start or turn to page 36, I've got a comparison of our revenues this year to date, 3/31 versus last year. Most of the variances are small at this point. We're under where we were last year. I'm happy to point out, though, that very little variation in tax revenue, which is good because the tax tribunal and board of review adjustments have slowed down, basis or versus the pace they were on through March 31st of last year. The big variance is in transfers in, and that is simply a timing difference of when I'm recording the transfer from our tax revolving fund and our allowed transfer out of the revenue sharing reserve fund, which did not take place this year until the month of April. So I have no major revenue concerns at this point. The expenditure summary on the bottom or on the next page, on page 37, most of this difference, the $502,000 variance compared with a year ago, is in the number of payrolls. As of March 31st, 2011, we had 6 payrolls recorded to date, cash basis. As of March 31st, 2012, we have 7. And the transfer out variance is a timing difference as well. So we're right within our budget parameters through 3 months. And it's just an update as of that point in time. Unless there's any questions. move on.
Thank you, Dean. Okay, the next item on the agenda is Drain Commissioner salary for the calendar year 2013.
You had asked staff, and I'm going to take full responsibility for this, to come up with a recommended salary for the Drain Commissioner. What I've done is provided select information out of the Drain Commissioner's annual report, which I believe that was presented in February. And, you know, there really wasn't a lot that I could do with this because I don't have firsthand knowledge of how much time would be spent specifically on drain functions versus the other activity in the Drain Commissioner's office, including the soil erosion component. But I did, with the assistance of Human Resources, do a quick survey of the counties that we normally use for compensation comparables. And the best example of a strict drain commission function or department was Allegan County. And I've indicated here information for Allegan County. They have 780 established county drains. They do have stormwater management systems, although I'm not really well-versed or knowledgeable as to what those are. And that drain commissioner's salary is $71,000. Looking at information out of the drain commissioner's annual report and using the time allocations, one of the ways of looking at this would be using those time allocations to determine what a range might be for this salary. That was kind of a starting point, but primarily, and I'm sure Kevin will want to comment on this, when I reviewed the annual report and when I look at the number of drains, and Kevin points out in some information that he had sent that I briefly looked at this afternoon, we have a limited number of drains, and there's the expenditures for those drains last year were $1,080. So I just don't see where there's a lot of activity with those drains. And my recommendation, take it as it is a salary of $7,000 with no benefits for the drain commissioner.
Jason?
I did some research of my own. Kevin had been gracious enough to provide us with some information by email. I think most of us have seen it also. We had the packet on our desk when we came in. And I know that in your interest, of course, it's to try to keep it, or in the interest of at least the positions, to try to keep the salary as high as possible, I guess. But I thought that the numbers provided in the material were kind of high, and of course Allegan was included as it was one of the higher ones. So I just picked up 3 random. I tried 4, but I couldn't get through to the Sheboygan Drain Commissioner, who apparently doesn't make enough that he has to use the stamps of the county for his own Christmas stuff. But in any event, I contacted the Alpena County, and by the way, none of these have the soil erosion duties, so I mean it is definitely a limited. But I contacted Alpena County, who pays their drain commissioner $7,200 a year. Antrim County pays their drain commissioner, and now Antrim, of course, has. I'm not sure exactly what their drains are and what the comparison is as far as the drains. I didn't get detailed. I just did salaries. But I mean, given it's consistent with our particular area of the state, Antrim County pays their drain commissioner $8,730.44 plus provides health and life insurance. And in Charlevoix County, now this is the one that was most interesting of all. Charlevoix County pays their drain commissioner $200 a month plus a per diem.
Jeez.
Okay, now and I get it. And one of the things that you had pointed out in your packet was that you do have certain if not statutory, at least responsibilities that, as an elected official, to be, Department of Public Works and other things that correspond with the Drain Commissioner's responsibilities. So I think that whatever we do, and I tend to agree with Mr. Bott's assessment of what the value of it is. I think that accounts for the limited amount of duties that you're going to do without the meetings. I mean, if you didn't go to a meeting, well, I mean, it's up to you. If you didn't go to the meetings, because you're an elected person, you're accountable to the people who elect you. But that is very similar to what we have. You take the phone calls, you take the complaints, you have to answer to certain people, constituents, and then there are other duties. If you go to a meeting, you should be paid for your time. So I think that I tend to concur with Mr. Bott's assessment.
Anyone else?
I don't have small, my pen's too small for you to see.
All right.
Yeah, I guess before I even jump into this thing, I would like to get some input from our current Drain Commissioner on where he sees the responsibility level and the amount of time that, based on the activity level and and the number of things going on in Grand Traverse County and his responsibility, where his time allocation would be versus where the analysis is, because we got to somewhat rely on what you're telling us, I think, in terms of where you would see this responsibility level, and as compared to trying to either look at it from a perspective of a proration of duties within one person, or are we looking at the overall responsibility of the person and what the proper compensation would be? I mean, I find it hard to believe that you would be paid a county commissioner's salary without benefits, because I would think that you would work as hard and as long as we would, even on the question of benefits. I would not vote for not giving you benefits, but you'd have to tell me where you see your time commitment versus the other responsibilities in terms of how we would allocate the salary. How you would view it.
If that's possible. Great, thanks, Mr. Chair. My name is Kevin McElia, your County Drain Commissioner. My presentation on the screen is black and white. It's not as beautiful as Sarah's was earlier here. I just want to show some black and white numbers and facts. So I guess I'll address Commissioner Inman's questions first. And that's what I've tried to do. I just recently learned of this, and so within 24 hours I had to put this together. But these facts spell out directly the task that Commissioner Inman had just asked. And so I'm going to fast forward to the last page, second to the last page, where I've done an analysis of tasks. Okay, at the top table, you see that was the original way that I tried to work this out, in a very conservative, as Dean has trained me, and coming together with some numbers. So if we just purely base this on the annual report of 2011, we haven't gone back the other years and looked at the average of the numbers. So let's just keep it simple. We look at the 2011 report, and in that report, it showed 642 hours of drain duties. 557 of those hours were in mandated meetings. There's no per diem earned by the Drain Commissioner, so because it's part of the salary. So that's what you see in the first two columns. I then took from the annual report the total departmental hours on commercial review, which will still be the Drain Commissioner's responsibility in some respects, as mandated. The beauty of the original program was that this was one-stop shopping. Stormwater and soil erosion reviews were provided together under one fee schedule. It was a lot of bang for the buck, but let me not digress. The answer to the question is, what are the task hours? And so in that annual report, I took those commercial hours that we did,
And then realistically, most of the stormwater reviews that mandated by law that the Drain Commissioner shall have to look at, very conservatively, I would say 50% of the commercial hours will still have to be looked at in that regard. I left out all residential, just again, to be very conservative. There's not a whole lot of stormwater concerns on the majority of residential. Again, just to come up with some very, realistic numbers there. Okay, the other concern, and basically this is a shopping list on these tasks. If you go down, what do you want to pay for? These are the tasks. And so you see as you go down, there's a lot of complaint calls. Those are for a variety of versions. As their surveyor was here, that was a good point. He answers these complaint calls. I'd say 33% of our complaint calls are directly related to flooding. There's a variety of them. It's hard to, I'm confident in that conservative number. So 73 hours are associated with that. Looking ahead, there's financial reporting, budgeting, reviews, not only for the departmental budget, but the $160,000 in drain funds. Sure, there was only $1,000 spent last year. I'm very frugal with taxpayer dollars, but there's been more spent in other years. Finally, there's an administrative, perhaps we could slash the training and conference tasks. So that's my very conservative analysis of task. In that top table, you see that I associated with the current salary and benefits per hour with office staff. Let me back up. In this table, you see from the page earlier, there's the current salary and benefits of all staff in the office, with or without benefits, depending on how you choose to do that. So at the minimum without benefits, I'm currently earning $29 an hour in these services and other staff. So then I took that number and applied that to the hours of task that Commissioner Inman is requesting a conservative estimate of. And those are some minimums and maximums depending on what you choose on your shopping list to what services need to be provided. Then, if we look ahead, then I just recently got Dean's analysis, and so I plugged in his numbers. I respect his opinion, and I was glad to see, because Allegan County is very much a comparable county. When we did the Siegel study back in 2007, Siegel study said this drain commissioner should be paid, what Allegan is now at 71. I was just grateful for a job and do the services, and we froze all our salaries. And at that time, let me back up to this. This is a good graph to see on, I believe it's page 2 of your packet. Here on the screen, you'll see here are some comparable counties, just as Commissioner Gilman, you have looked at. Now, these are really comparable counties rather than some of the ones you looked at that don't really have drains or some of the functions. I haven't looked at those in perpetuity. I know Antrim, some of the others you mentioned, but I did include Allegan, Grand Traverse. These are some comparables. And what I've done there is show some of the range as well as the FAR full-time and part-time basis. As you can see, Kalamazoo is a part-time drain commissioner, 40,000, some 200 drains. So before I get off topic, as I was mentioning, those are some of the comparables. And I was mentioning I was glad that Dean used Allegan County as a comparable because it truly is. So then looking at Dean Bott's option, comparing to Allegan County only, you see on the screen that I then took those same task hours that I just mentioned. They've already been figured out, and I used Dean's formula of percentages of overall hours. And that's how those numbers are arrived at. So what we're starting to see is some ranges. In most good presentations, you remember the first thing that was said and the last thing that was said, and nothing in the middle. So I just want to say that my beginning statement is this should really be perhaps a discussion or a dialogue about what tasks and what responsibilities need to be decided in this transition strategy. I want to fully cooperate. I respect your decision, and there's a transition strategy and all the duties that need to be performed. By whom? And so perhaps first have that discussion. As I mentioned, look at these tasks and the hours associated with the task and how they're going to get accomplished. And then my final statement would be, that's why I recommend that we sit down and study this further. There's some other issues that I welcome. It's going to be a lengthy discussion about the overlapping of tasks and the responsibilities, and at what level do you want to manage these tasks. And so perhaps then a recommendation could come back, and then these costs can be assigned. That's not my issue, is to make sure the services are maintained. And then we set those costs. Your deadline is November, so I welcome any questions anyone has.
Rob?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to accept staff's recommendation of setting the salary of the Drain Commissioner $7,000 a year with no benefits.
Support.
Is there any other discussion? Larry?
Well, I don't agree with the recommendation. I think the position's worth more than $7,000 as an elected official. And certainly, if you just take a look at the county commission responsibilities, and you say, you know, if you take a look at our tasks, I mean, some of us are putting 40, 50, 60 hours a week in. And we're getting paid $7,000 a year with benefits. So if he's going to be managing, you know, all these tasks and these responsibilities at our level with no benefits, that absolutely makes no sense to me. I will not be voting for that motion. But it seems to me that the salary would be a little bit higher, and it would be compensated with the same benefits that the county commissioner makes, or what his current benefit structure is. That's my personal opinion. And the second piece is kind of the Jason Gilman standard speech. When I disagreed with a decision, I generally vote no, you know, going down the line. So I disagreed with the separation of responsibilities, but I guess I want a little more time put into, the actual task and responsibilities rather than trying to prorate, an assumed time level. And thirdly, I just can't imagine anybody running for this office for $7,000 with no benefits and being responsible for all these responsibilities.
You're going to run, aren't you?
I'm going to call for the vote now.
With no benefits, I'm saying.
I'm going to call for the vote. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Lundquist.
Oh, boy. No.
Thomas?
No.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Gilman?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Inman?
No.
Chairman Flees.
Yes.
4-3 passes.
Motion passes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Well, we're still on an agenda. Can I ask a question of staff? With regards to the Drain Commissioner's office, I realize we've been supplying an office space and staff based on the duties assigned to that. Have we looked at, is the office space still appropriate for the duties assigned? Is that something we're looking at? I know us as county commissioners don't have our own office or, computer, IT support, all that. We can come to the county and use the county as needed. But is that something that's been looked at or thought of?
No, not really. I mean, the office that Kevin occupies now is, he's using because he still has the soil erosion.
Yeah.
Have not really evaluated the need for an on-site or on-campus office.
Okay.
To be honest.
It stays through the end of this year anyway.
Absolutely.
So and we've still got to have the state approval to make the switch to the construction code, and we're working on that.
I guess my thought is if someone's going to run for this office, and they might be thinking they're getting their own office and, whatever, and we don't want to give that impression if it's not the truth. That's all.
Yep, good point.
Well,
Okay, next item on our agenda is update on the county administrator search. Jen?
Your update for this week is just, I sent the interview questions. Please, any feedback, I actually got feedback from, excuse me, from Dean today. So, if you could just get that to me by like noon on Fridays, just so I can get that updated and out to you guys before the interviews, which start at 8 a.m. on Monday, that would be great. That's really the only update.
Okay, thank you.
I thought it was a good cross-section of questions.
You guys did do a good job with those.
Yep.
Give Jen a lot of credit.
Jen makes them sound better than I typed them, but.
Since I've been gone for a week, did you email the questions?
We gotta have one.
Yes.
So it's sitting in my bucket at home.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay.
I'd be happy to print you a copy too, if you need
All right, okay.
one, Larry.
Yeah, maybe I'll stop in. Okay, thanks.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is unfinished business.
If I could just address this, I got a couple commissioners made somewhat of a suggestion at the last meeting that they wanted to be present during this discussion. I also heard feedback from several other of the supervisors of the 5 townships, and they would like an opportunity to speak with all commissioners. So they asked me if I was willing to make a recommendation at this meeting to defer this to the board meeting and then bring that to the topic of business. So if we have 2 commissioners that are going to Rotary Charities or for the Rotary Minstrel Show, that they would be part of that discussion, and then they could leave after that. So,
No, I really would like to see us delay it until next month rather than try and push it into this month, because then if we spend all our time doing this particular item, then we don't get a chance to work on any of the other items also.
Yeah. I guess timing's not critical on this.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking. It's not critical.
We could
Push it off to May.
Schedule this to May.
I think that would be much better.
That'd be
For
fine.
me, I would rather see us push it off to May.
Okay, I'd be fine with that, and I'll work with this.
And then we
on
can,
it.
because we know we're going to have a health department presentation.
Right.
And it's just, it gives us a chance to be able to have maybe
Okay.
part of the discussion, and maybe the health department presentation could be at the end of the meeting instead of the beginning.
All right.
So that if anything needs to be voted on.
I'll work with staff on balancing it out and see which meeting
Could you
we
please?
assign to.
That'd be
Okay.
great.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks. Yeah.
Dean?
Since the agenda covered the septic treatment facility, I will add that at the end of this month, the 1st of May, the bond payments are due. The bond payments, including the share that we pay on the Traverse City Treatment Plant debt, total $124,445, and the fund is currently $64,000 in the red. So the issue is still looming.
64,000 plus the 124?
Yeah, we're running a negative cash balance currently, and I don't anticipate that will cure itself by the time the bond payments are due. And those are interest-only payments on those bond issues.
So they're going to be short $128,000.
No, they'd be 170, 180,000 short come May 1st.
So Dean, do we make that payment and then bill the townships? Is that what the process is?
We
on
have,
that?
the county treasurer and I discussed this today. We will absolutely make those payments.
Good.
And we have always made our bond payments, and we will always, we will continue to do that.
But will we then bill, because I think that was
Yeah,
the
we're just gonna
decision,
bill. We're
is
just
that we're
billing.
going to bill the townships for the shortfall.
We did that with the cash deficit at the end of the year, but the agreements, that agreement really has not been executed. So, I mean, and the townships have paid the amounts I've invoiced them,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
they're operating in good faith.
Good.
And I expect that will be the process. We'll
Okay.
probably bill them for those bond
Yeah.
payments, so it
They're
doesn't
ready
affect
to
our
do that.
cash.
Okay, next item on the agenda is new business. I don't believe we have any. Second is public comment. No public comment. Commissioner committee reports. I have one. Last Friday night from 7 to 9 was the start of the 125th anniversary of the Fife Lake Library. And so I thought the wife and I would drive over there, and it said 7 to 9, and so we got there about 10 after 7. I figured it was kind of a in and out. Well, the poet was reading some poetry. And much to my amazement, their meeting room was completely full. And a lot of people there. And so we went in and they got out a couple extra chairs and we sat down, and next thing was proclamations from the Fife Lake Township, then Fife Lake Village. The third one was, you guys remember Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners proclamation? And then so they said, whoa, Commissioner Fleece is here. And I'm sure he'd want to read this proclamation.
All right.
I couldn't even get my coat off. But anyway.
Thanks for filling in for me.
I did do something that I thought you guys would want me to do. And that was the first thing after I got started, I asked them for our $17. And then I had a second thought, and I said, we'd like that with interest. But anyway, Rob showed up, ended up showing up, and it was really a nice gathering. It's a beautiful building they got, and the people, they're all locals down there, and it was a nice time. And then the second item I'd like to talk about is our chairman, Commissioner Inman, wrote me into this one. And it was Monday morning, 7:30 at the Holiday Inn. And I was supposed to give a welcome to the Road Commission seminar being held there. And I figured, be 40, 50 people, that'll be fine. Well, there was between 130 and 150 people there.
Wow.
And so we certainly welcomed them to Grand Traverse County and thanked them for selecting the Holiday Inn. And they had a full topic, and one of the items on their agenda was a violation of the Open Meetings Act. So I explained to them, I introduced our road commissioners, and then I said we'd recently increased it, that they're appointed from 3 to 5 because of the possibility of violation of Open Meetings Act if you get 2 commissioners that just happen to be not even talking about road commission business. But so I explained to them the redistricting, or the districting, election by district. And I said that we were responsible for pursuing that legislation. As soon as it's effective, the board has indicated that they would like to have our commissioners elected too. So it went very well, and then I was on my way over to Michigan Northern Counties.
Jeez, busy day.
Really. And that's all I have.
Did you try what I did 2 years ago?
What?
Tell them they had to kick $10 into the pot before we let them out of the county?
No. Jason?
I just like to comment on something that's somewhat troubling, I think. I try to imagine if, I represent the peninsula, and we have a number of farms here. If after several decades of growing a particular type of grape or a particular cherry, if an agency of the government came in and at gunpoint or carried a warrant, said, you're going to tear down every one of your vines, you're going to burn them, or you're going to cut your trees down because we now have declared this particular grape or this particular cherry tree an invasive species. Well, it's happening around us. In Marion, there is a farm. They raise pigs. They have a perfectly acceptable containment facility. Yet the DNR has declared a certain type of pig, or a number of certain types of pigs, an invasive species. And these people who've raised these pigs for decades are now literally meeting jackboot thugs from the DNR, guns, 4-wheel drives, and they're going on their property after serving a warrant to go destroy if there are any pigs alive. They're putting these farmers out of business, and I think it's atrocious. And I'd like to, at least for my part, offer an objection from this seat, and I would just appreciate if any other commissioners would like to concur with me on that.
Why don't we prepare a resolution
Well, I'd like to just speak to, did you get your information on that particular topic off the radio maybe today at Talk Show?
Actually, no, I've been following up on it. I actually spoke to Mr. Golden from the DNR's office, who is the communications director for Rodney Stokes, who's the GNR, he's the DNR director. And I have followed it, and I followed a couple of the farmers who've had to destroy their pigs. It's very disturbing, and it is, in my view, and I've looked at the case, there's actually a case where the Michigan Association of Animal Farmers, or Michigan Farm Animals Association, has filed, for injunctive relief, and through the appeals process, and they lost. But what's funny is it's the designation for an invasive species. It must meet all particular qualifiers to become an invasive species, and they don't. Yet the declared invasive species by Director Stokes somehow stood through the process, and I don't believe that the farmers, frankly, are getting their due process. They're going in, they're telling them they got to kill them, and then we'll talk about it later. So I think there's a real problem here.
Well, my understanding is, because my thoughts were the same as yours, and I'm familiar with hog farms. Wagner's right up the road from me grew hogs for years, and I mean a lot of them. And that's what when I envision a hog farm, that's what a hog farm is. But these are wild game or game ranches that offer hunting, and they're not the butcher hogs that we're thinking about. They import different breeds of hogs, and that's what the DNR is after.
Some of them are, and some of them are bred for the game ranches and the game preserves. For example, one that was taken out recently, he has his 200-acre compound. 2 feet, the fences are dug 2 feet into the ground, and I mean they're set up to contain the swine. Now, these pigs are used for food too, and they are in our local markets. So I mean, it's not as cut and dry as these are just they go out and shoot the pig type of swine. These serve both the food table and the sport industry. But bottom line is, these are families that have relied on these for decades, literally decades, and now the order actually came in 2009 under the Granholm administration, yet our governor and the director, who was also appointed at that time, he's a Parks and Rec guy, but our governor still remains somewhat silent on this. Now I've been trying to get a hold of Attorney General Bill Schuette, and I'm going to have to use my one phone call that I've kind of saved at some point. Well, I mean, I just think it's important that their rights are protected. I don't think that their Fourth or their Fifth Amendment rights. The Fifth Amendment for due process, and Fourth for it's actually a part of the Fourth anyhow. But there is a problem that I have with it, and like I said, I just wanted to express that. And if the board is willing to sign up on a resolution, I'd be glad to draft one.
Yeah, no, I agree with your position, and
where's that at?
I think that perhaps the board ought to entertain the thought of a resolution, primarily because of the way they did it. If I understand it correctly, 8 months ago, they issued the order to these farms and said, you need to get rid of your pigs. Well, then all of a sudden, it's exactly like you stated. They show up with a warrant, and they're in the hog killing business, and I disagree with that, because what business could be next?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Senator Walker was at the library, and very, very, very briefly, we touched on this. He's aware of the situation, and I got the impression they might be pursuing this legislatively, so anything we produce might help that along.
Sure.
But yeah, if the board agrees, if Jason wants to draft something with some facts in it, I'd be more than happy to support it. And obviously, Dick would too.
So would I.
Yeah, good.
We know there's more to the story than we've heard so far, though. I'm pretty sure of that.
Well, but it's still rights. my right to operate a business.
Yeah. Well, I'll point back to one thing. It's called the elimination of smoking in all, in all the places of employment in the state of Michigan, and private places. And let me tell you, it had nothing to do with smoking. I own that building. I pay taxes, and a lot of taxes on that building. In fact, 2 commercial buildings. And I'm told that I can't allow people to smoke in there. That's an invasion of your privacy, and they took away rights, and the people that got on the bandwagon that supported that, this, what is it, the tobacco, what do they call it?
Coalition. The Tobacco Coalition.
Tobacco Coalition has no idea what they're doing. They couldn't get it through the city commission to ban smoking in the parks, which is absolutely ludicrous. So now I hear on the radio, they're over in Benzie County. But they are depriving people of their constitutional rights, period, in my opinion.
No argument there. If they want to get rid of smoking, the federal law to ban it, but they won't because they make a lot of money off taxes.
Well, it's just like, why aren't they opposed to drugs? Look at all the problems we have with people killing people, you know, like the lady that got shot 7 times and her 3-day-old baby ripped out of her arms. You know, that's not normal behavior. But they can't control the drugs, so they go after the smoker or whatever else.
We ought to tax marijuana, too.
Okay. Notices and announcements. Finance Committee will be held at 11:30 or immediately following the final interview for the county administrator, to be held on April 24th per Jen's rule. Right, Jen?
Per Jen's rule.
And she must have had Dean in her back pocket on that one. Anything else?
I noticed it's going on.
Closed session?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Done good.